Sturdy for 30 this week, we've got former Illini basketball star Lucas Johnson joining us. Lucas, of course, was on the Elite Eight team back in 2001, had a great career, and he's now moved on and has a normal life. It's amazing. These guys leave the court and they go do stuff. So what are you doing now, Lucas? What are you up to?
First of all, I love the fact that you use that word star. Holy cow. Let's use that word loosely here. And then to say I have a normal life is another thing we need to keep in quotations as well. But so these days, I'm actually a high school math teacher, as crazy as that is. So doing that thing, to say that this year's been challenging in the teaching profession. We went from the heroes in March to the villains come August when we didn't want to go back or whatever. So it's been challenging, but man, it's crazy because I never would have pictured myself being a teacher. I never would have thought that was the path that God would have put me down. But it's been an amazing journey, and I really feel like I found where I'm meant to be and what I love to do. So it's been great.
That's awesome. And of course, you got a couple kids. I've seen them on Facebook there, and are they going to be ballers? Is that where?
Yeah. So I got a 7-year-old boy whose name is Jake, and he could not want to have anything less to do with sports. He's into his computers and all that. And then my daughter, who's 9, Olivia, she loves basketball. So we're trying to push her along and not be that dad that pushes her too much, like where she hates basketball by the time she's 13. So letting her love it on her own. But my wife actually played basketball at DePaul on scholarship. So there's an internal family battle of where the allegiance lies. And as of right now, I definitely am in the lead. So we definitely have some Illini fans in the house. So
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Get them in the orange and blues. That's good. It's been kind of an interesting thing. You've obviously followed Illinois over the past few years, and, they had the great run in 05, but since then it's kind of been a struggle. It's been tough. And this year they finally have a team that seems like it's got a chance to make a run. What have your thoughts been on the team so far?
It's been a fun team to watch. I think they're, once Io and Kofi decided to come back, I think the expectation level was skyrocketed. I think it was deservingly so, but I still think they had a lot to prove. They had a nice season the year before. Obviously, cut short would have made the tourney, which would have been an awesome treat for us fans.
Yes.
Who, me loving the NCAA tournament is great, but me being able to root for my team in the NCAA tournament, it's been few and far between. Since that 05 team. So it would have been awesome. And so it was nice to see that they were coming back. And I think the expectations were just, and they were due. And then they've done really well. I think sometimes the fans can be hard on them for losses. I think one thing we need to remember is they're going through this COVID thing just like the rest of us, and their normal is so far from normal these days that oh, you should never lose a game like that at home. Well, guys, it's not a home game.
Exactly.
It happens to be where you normally play, but I fed off the fans. I didn't feed off of the fact that I was bouncing the ball on a court that said Illinois on it. I certainly wasn't feeding off of the weather that was outside in Champaign. So they're at a disadvantage, and that's across the board. Then you throw them in a conference where, it's not an easy conference this year, which is what you want to play in to be prepared for later on. But you gotta love the stars of the stars, right? Io and Kofi are playing great basketball. You gotta love what Curbello's started to do. And I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of what his potential is. It's surreal to see DeMonte out there. I mean, talk about going, wait a second. I'm trying to explain to my kids that I played with his dad, and they're like, Dad, that just makes you old. I'm like, I know, that's part of the problem.
Yes. Yes.
But I love where they're at. I think there's definitely room for improvement. I'm interested to see what they do when the lights are on come tourney time.
You had a similar, I mean, you guys came into that 2001 season. Coach Self comes in, you guys are hyped. I mean, it's like, and your schedule was loaded, and it's like everybody was fired up about that season. So expectations are, and you lost a couple games early that year, but lost to like Arizona. I mean, these are tough games though. I mean, I think sometimes people forget how difficult playing a team like, well, it turns out Baylor's pretty good, by the way. So
Yeah.
So how is it to manage those expectations in a season like this when there's so much hype around it?
Well, and I think the seasons, comparing my junior year to this year, it's slightly different in that we were an old team. Like we were juniors and seniors, and we were ready to win. I, I'm not saying they weren't ready to win, but they're young. I mean,
Yeah.
they're playing Curbelo, they're playing Miller, Kofi's a sophomore. I mean, like, these aren't guys that are seasoned vets. They're, you're leaning on DeMonte, for his senior leadership, which has been great. Georgie's considered an old guy. I mean, like, it's not like we were stacked in the experience of being. I mean, have they played? Has anyone in that team played in the NCAA tournament?
Right.
So like, for us, it was all right. The year before, we got our taste of the NCAA tournament. We lost to Florida. We were ready to go, and so playing those early games that were tough, we knew what it was doing. We wanted to win them. We also knew the quality of opponent we were playing. I think our losses came to like 3 number 1 teams. So it wasn't, it wasn't like we were playing, I think nowadays, or what Illinois basketball has turned into, unfortunately, a huge win is a top 25 win. And ideally, with the direction we're going, that's changing, where the level of expectation is rising, which ideally that's where you want to be, because obviously you're performing well, which is raising that level of expectation. But I think that, under Coach Underwood and some of these, senior leaders on their team now, ideally they're handling those tough losses, but good losses in the beginning of the season well. And it doesn't seem like it's truly affected them in terms of their play. They've bounced back from losses that and I wouldn't even say they should have won. You shouldn't win against Baylor when they're that good and you're not at home. Like that, if you win, that's a great win. If you lose, it's, and you hate to say it, it's a solid loss. Like you played them hard, you played them tough. And you hate to say that, oh, what a great loss, but it's really providing that experience for later on, and ideally down the road in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, no question. I think that's something fans don't get. Maybe, it's harder. They just want to see, I think they all want it to be 2004-05 every year, right? I mean, go 30.
I wanted my years to be 2004-05 too. So
it's definitely true. You had these seniors actually get a decision, like they can come back again next year, be super seniors. You went through it was different, but it's similar. Like you chose to really fight back, come back early, maybe from a knee injury. And so you could play with your guys. So talk about a little bit that decision for you.
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. In the moment, there wasn't a decision to be made. It was, there were some publications that had us ranked number 1 in the country going into the season. I'm most likely going to be the starting 3-man on a potential Final Four team. I'm like, yeah, this is an absolute no-brainer. I'm getting my butt back on this, on this court this year. Looking back on it, to say there was some oversight. And the thing is that Coach Self, outwardly said, he's like, you got the red shirt. Like, if you want it, you can come back. I'm not saying he wanted me back, but he offered. And so when I had to make that decision, I made it in the moment because I wanted to be a part of the team. I wanted to be out there with my guys. I was one of 5 seniors on the team that were going out. It just would have been different coming back and being, one of the lone seniors on a really young team. And I knew what the potential of the year could have been. Now, looking back on it, playing in my first Big Ten game 3 months after the day of my surgery of a completely torn ACL. I mean, I tell people that, I tell doctors that now, they're like, "You crazy?"
What?
Yeah, and they're like, "Well, what percentage were you playing at?" I'm like, "Well, for me, I was playing at 70%. It looked like I was playing at 40% because I was just naturally slower than everybody else." But like, and I've had knee issues since then because of that. In hindsight, would I do it again? Probably not. I probably would have redshirted. Don't regret it. We had a good run. We had a chance to do some damage in the tournament, and it would have been fun. It would be fun to be completely healed right now. I'll tell you that. But it's really hard to tell, a 21-year-old kid or young man that you got to wait a year, and your guys that you grew up with at the university are going to go play a full season and potentially do some real damage, and you're going to be on the sideline and not truly a part of it. That's, it's tough. It's a tough decision to make.
Yeah, so obviously you're tight with those guys and stayed tight with them over the years. Do you have some memories, maybe some great memory from when you were playing that kind of still stands out, with the group?
Well, to be honest, a lot of our great memories were in practice. I mean, the best part of practice for us was the fact that we had guys on the bench that probably could have been starting at other Big Ten schools. And so our battles in practice were incredible. And Coach Self knew it, and he would pit guys against each other, and he knew it because he knew he could get the best out of us. And that was the best part of being a part of a group like that. I look at, and this is not a knock on the second group in 04-05, but they were so starter dominated that I don't see them having the same type of practices that we did, because they couldn't play their 5 starters together in practice because they would just dominate. We, on the other hand, I mean, not all the time, but we kicked the starters' butts sometimes, and then they'd come back and punch us in the mouth and kicked our butts the next day, and that's why we kind of became the team that we became. It was those times that really, everyone sees the games, but those practice times were some of the most fun I've had, because you just get to battle with guys that A, you respect, B, you love, but C, you kind of want to kick the crap out of on a daily basis.
That's true. Yeah. I remember I got to come over and watch some of those. I brought some of my teams when I was coaching over there and watched some practices. They were great. And then I always remember in 04-05, Bruce Weber used to take and put Darren Williams on the other team to play against the starters, just to push him, because it was just to make it harder for him, because they knew he was the best guy. And so make it challenging. So do you have a guy that, when you were known for being kind of, your whole team, they were hard-nosed, physical, tough. I mean, it was Big Ten basketball. I mean, that was Big Ten basketball. Was there anybody you emulated your game after at that time, where you just said, this is who I am?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I partly saw what my brother had to do to play at that level, knowing his skill set, knowing what he brought to the table, and knowing kind of the road he took from a walk-on to starting on a Big Ten championship team his senior year. I saw that it took him playing at that level. It took him playing defense. It took him playing hard and taking charges and going after loose balls and kind of being that scrappy guy. And we were different type of players, but coming into college, I was very aware that I could score at high school, but everyone was a scorer on our team. I'm like, so I looked at situations. I'm like, who's going to get the ball, Frank or me? It's like, so like I wasn't going to be the go-to guy. And the moment I accepted that, I think I was able to be, and people can call it a role player. I'm completely fine with that. But I I provided a need, a necessity for the team. And I looked at guys like Brian Cardinal. Now Brian Cardinal was a better scorer than I was, but he did a lot of the same things and was very successful at doing those things. And I was a young buck when he was, a junior and senior. And I think he was one of the guys that I could kind of see myself kind of emulating my game around.
Yeah, well, I did call you a star, so you can go with that. I mean, just run with that, and
I love it.
So,
Trust me, I'm taping this because I'm showing it to my kids.
So they
Someone called me a star.
put that on tape. So and obviously one of the guys on your team, Robert Archibald, who is a guy you knew well. I mean, I knew him a little bit, and it's been it's been about a year since his passing, and how have you dealt with that, and how do you have any great Arch memories? I mean, he was a larger than life personality, as you know, and so give us some Arch stuff there.
Yeah, we kind of grew up together. We were, like freshman year dorm, roommates in the dorm, and all the way through, me standing up in his wedding and just doing life together after basketball. A lot of times you grow apart from teammates. You don't see them very often after you're a part of a team in college. And Arch was the exact opposite. Like we took a group of us took a trip to Spain when he was playing over there, and watched him over there. And it was awesome to grow up together as young adults, and then just kind of continue that throughout. Our kids are close and friends and whatnot. But meeting Arch as a freshman was very eye-opening to me. I didn't realize that he had only been there in the States for a year. And so what he was wearing was not what I had seen before out of everyday Americans at that age. And his tight black, maybe he was just ahead of the game. That's what he claimed, but his tight black jeans and his frosted tips in his hair, and he wore it like he was proud of it, and no one was going to change it, and this is who he was. And it worked for him. I mean, he voted himself all Big Ten hair, and I probably would have agreed with him. But him and Demir and I rooming together for years. I was the oddball out. I was the American of that group. And his mom bringing over Scottish pie and haggis, and I'm like, I'm not eating haggis, like not happening.
You're not gonna have.
No, and especially once I realized what it was, I'm like, no, I'm okay.
We'll pass.
I'll pass. But it was so cool to be so close to someone and to see his journey, right? Like there's not a single Illini fan, not one, other than his parents, that would have predicted Rob from his freshman year to being drafted on draft day that year. And we threw a big draft party. I made a big sign. It said Lucas and Arch's draft party. I didn't end up getting drafted, but hey, I was still eligible for the draft that year. I was still eligible. But I do remember on his draft day, we were all sitting in his apartment in Chicago. He was so nervous. So we're like, all right, let's go play some euchre. So we were playing euchre just to try and get his mind off of it. they cut to commercial. His phone rings, and TV pops back on, and it said, "What during break, the Memphis Grizzlies select Robert Archibald." And so we start shaking up our beers and spraying in his face. And little did we know he was on the phone with Mr. Basketball, Jerry West. And so he's
The logo.
trying to, yeah, exactly, the logo. He's trying to like make complete sentences, and we're just dousing him with beer and spraying him in the face. So that was an interesting moment. It was a nice way to kind of kick off his NBA career.
Yeah, I actually remember you guys. I was with you guys, standing with you guys when you rushed the court in the Indiana game back in was it 2013? I think it was, when it beat number one Indiana.
And to be honest, that was more memorable than some of our games that we played, because we didn't get to experience it as a fan.
Yeah.
So like now we're like running on the court. I mean, we're like kids in a candy store. We're filming each other as we're running on the court. And I have a great picture that someone caught from the stands of us like just standing there in awe, filming each other with our camera phones. And it was because like we really truly are Illini fans. Like it's not like, yeah, you know, there are some guys that, okay, I played there. I checked that box. I did that. But like, man, I'm going back as much as I can, bringing my kids. We're trying to teach this family right. They bleed orange and blue.
That's good. That's good. Now we got to have more of them, you know? So as you go,
exactly,
as we look back kind of at your career a little bit, one of the crazy, I think perhaps the moment of your career that maybe doesn't typify your career, but kind of capped it, was Lute Olson, right? I mean, Lute Olson, I mean, you were living rent free in Lute Olson's head at that time. Am I wrong here? I mean, this guy's crazy. I mean, he's pointing at his head. How do you get, was that something you almost took pride in, that you could get in people's heads like that?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I wasn't intentionally dome diving in Lute's head. I was just being me. Now, that's kind of sad that just being me can piss people off that much. Maybe that says a lot about my own personality, and I need to take an internal, evaluation of that. But the funny thing is we actually had a thread going, text message thread with all of our teammates from those years, ever since Arch's kind of celebration of life that we did about a year ago. And it's been really great to kind of keep up with some of those guys. And Sean Harrington wrote to everyone. He's like, you ever wonder, like, Lucas was able to, like, the only coaches that hate Lucas are Hall of Famers. He's like, Lute Olson absolutely hated Lucas. He's like, Coach K absolutely hated Lucas. And Coach Self chimes in and goes, and Coach Self. And I'm like, thanks, Coach. Thanks.
Appreciate that one.
Yeah, so, exactly.
But I think you were kind of guy probably exactly the opposite. I think Coach Self probably loved having you on the team, because you're one of those guys that the other team didn't like very well, but your team loved to have on their side because you did all the dirty work for them.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. And the thing is that Coach loved having me on the team because I did all those dirty work things, but it was a mutual respect thing, because I remember playing at Iowa. This is where I was like, whoa, that's the guy I want coaching me. And I know Illini fans have some seated resentment towards Coach Self. I get it. But like, we were playing at Iowa, and oh my gosh, why is his name blanking now? Big guy who went to the league, played for years. He was a JUCO transfer. Anyway, on Iowa, timeout's called, and we're crossing paths, and he punches me in the stomach. We're going to our own benches, and he punches me in the stomach. And this is at Carver Hawkeye, and this is when Alford was coaching. So me being me, I follow them into the Hawkeye, huddle. And I'm like, what the hell was that? What are you doing? Well, Alford just goes off on me. Get the bleep out of our huddle, boy. Just ranting on me. Coach Self, not really knowing what's going on, comes over and drags me away. I tell him what happened, and he heard Alford yelling at me. We're walking into the huddle. We're walking down the path to go to the locker room at halftime, down the tunnel, and I'm right by Coach Self. Oh, he lit into Alford. You
Really?
beep, beep, beep. If you ever talk to one of my players again like that. And like, to me, I was like, yep, that guy's got my back. You know,
Yeah.
it's like one of those things where, you know, I didn't feel targeted by my own coach. Like I was doing something wrong. He's like, no. I got my guys back. You're not doing that to one of my guys. And Coach Alford was another one who didn't quite like me.
Well, and that's important. I think it's important when you know your coach has your back and your teammates have your back, and that group really had that close knit style. Was there now? If you followed Illinois obviously since you graduated, have you seen another player who kind of was like you? You said, that guy's kind of like me. He kind of fills that role. I would pick maybe, and he was a different position, but I always thought a guy like Andres Feliz always seemed to be a guy who was just tougher and fought and scratched and clawed for everything he had. And, you know, he was a guard, but he was that guy who would do that. Is there a guy you thought of maybe that filled that role?
Yeah, he was certainly one of them. The only problem is every time I thought that, I was like, yeah, he's kind of like me, but he's way more talented. I thought that about a lot of people, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to make that comparison, but yeah, he's a good shooter, or yeah, he's a good defender. It was like I kept kind of adding things to their repertoire. I'm like, yeah, maybe he's not a lot like me. So, but no, Felice was definitely he was fun to watch because you just you know, he played so hard. Another guy, I would say, someone like Chester Frazier. You know, I remember watching him. He was obviously more talented than I was, but like he played hard. And guys like that. And a lot of those guys don't get, here's the thing. I got more recognition than a lot of those guys because I was on a winning team, right? Like winning cures a lot of things.
True.
So if I was on a team, you know, no one would know who the heck Lucas Johnson was. If I was on a team that was, you know, middle of the pack, lower of the pack, I mean, like if every year was like my freshman year, they'd be like, yeah, we went from 89 to 05. Those are our only good years. And we don't know, we can't remember a single person in between, right? Like, so winning helps in terms of, yeah, that guy wasn't a bad player. Well, yeah, it helped when you're surrounded by the talent that I was surrounded by. Like if I was asked to do more, yeah, not sure it would have been great. But because I was able to settle in a role like that, because we had so many other guys on the team that could do things, yeah, my star shined a little bit brighter than it normally would have probably.
And you mentioned your freshman year, you guys struggled. And I think that's kind of, maybe there's some correlation. And I'm not saying you're Io DeSumo, but they had a rough year his freshman year. And now they're kind of, then last year they're better. And this year they're ranked higher. How difficult is that going through that loop? Because you didn't lose in high school either. I mean, not, you lost games, but you didn't lose games. Like, you know, more games, right. You lose more than you won. And so your freshman year you struggle, and then you got to fight through that kind of. How is that transition? How is that time period for you?
Yeah, that freshman year was interesting because, you know, what I saw of Big Ten basketball was watching my brother, and his last 2 years were great, and they won the Big Ten his senior year. And then, of course, they have to graduate 7 seniors and bring in, you know, and then bring in us. And we're like, all right, we're going to continue the tradition. Yeah. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. To be honest, it was eye-opening the level that you needed to play at. Like, it really was. Like, the coming from high school, you think you're ready. You just do. And I wasn't even as hyped, you know, I wasn't even as hyped as some of these other guys. And I still think it's eye-opening to some of them. Like, you know, you look at a guy like Miller. He comes in and he's, you know, he's the creme de la creme coming in. And I think there were, you know, obviously not his first game. His first game he crushed. But like, I think there's been some moments for him where he's like, whoa, okay, like this is the level I need to play at. And so, but going back to your question, going through like a freshman year that we had, yeah, it sucked while we were in it. like,
Yeah,
like
no doubt.
it was tough. Like, and it had to have been tough on the coaches where they're coming off a high of winning the Big Ten the year before, and now it's like, okay, we're 3-13. Um, I'll tell you, I didn't pack for 4 days at the Big Ten tournament that year. I had plans that Thursday night back down in Champaign. Like, I'm like, all right, we're gonna go play a game and come home. I mean, I think 15 out of the 11 Big Ten teams were ranked that year, other than us. It was insane. Every night we were playing a ranked team. That's fun when you're one of the ranked teams. It's not fun when you're the bottom feeding team in the conference at the time.
Yeah.
But I think going through a lot of that stuff, I mean, it seems cliche, but it prepared us for later on, and puts a bad taste in your mouth. We don't want to do that again. We don't want to have a season like that again. I'm not saying we worked any harder during the off season because of it. I just think that you remember those things, and you do things to try and prevent that from happening again the following year.
Yeah, you probably appreciate the wins a little more than when they come because you've had to deal with the losses as you go through
When
it.
there are only 3 of them in the conference, you're like, it's sad. It's sad when you can count and name all of the wins you had in conference for one year. Like, yeah.
It was, I think it was a 07-08. Illinois had a similar run to the Big Ten title game, and I was covering them that year, and I was in the same boat. We go over there, hey, it's going to be one game. We'll go to this game, we'll stay all night, and then we'll come home the next day. Yeah, we go over there, and next thing you know, it's like we got four days in a row. What are we going to do here? We went shopping to buy clothes so we could have something to wear. It's crazy,
I was gonna say, time to hit the laundromat for sure.
Exactly. It's crazy. So, and so something that Illinois football is going through right now is a coaching change, and you had to go through one of those. The guy that recruited you, Lon Kruger, he leaves and takes the NBA job, and then you bring in Coach Self, who obviously you have a great relationship with, even though he does hate you, but we have it on record. But
take a number.
but talk about that, maybe the coaching change and how you fought through that, how difficult that was.
Yeah, to be honest, it was weird because my sophomore year, we weren't a bad team. We were, we got a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. We ended up losing to Florida, who ended up going to at least, I think it was like the Final Four, maybe even the national championship that game that year with Mike Miller and those guys. And so we felt like we were on track to compete the following year and do pretty well. And I think that was kind of the expectations of the fan base as well. So, and that was regardless of the coach that we were going to have. That was just strictly based off of the talent on the court. And so when Coach Kruger left, now I get it. I mean, money talks, and here's $10 million. Okay, it's deal with Lucas, Demir, and Arch again, or get paid $10 million. So,
tough call, but
yeah, tough call. And so when he decided to leave, honestly, we were like, we didn't know who was going to come in. And granted, my personality is not of, is the coach going to fit my style of play? My style of play, playing hard. There wasn't like, all right, are we going to run an offense that's well suited for my game? Pass the ball and go get rebounds. Like, it wasn't. So there was no nervousness around that. I knew that I was going to bust my butt regardless of whatever coach came in, and I was going to earn playing time. A lot of guys, I don't think our guys on our team felt this way, but a lot of guys would typically feel like, like new guy coming in, I got to get in good. It just wasn't like that. We had a tight knit group, and we knew what our talent level was, but I didn't know who Coach Self was. Like, I had no idea. I'm trying to think of some of the names that were. I thought Samson was thrown out at the time.
Yep.
Who was the guy from Utah? Old shorter guy. Can't remember. Like there were some names out there
Right.
that we knew of. I didn't know who Coach Self was. I'm like, Tulsa, where's that? And so when he and I had seen their Tulsa team, play in the Elite Eight the year before, but you're hardly like pinning it on the coach and looking at the coach while you're watching the game. So when he came in, it was very it wasn't nerve-wracking, but it was eye-opening once he came in. Like, okay, this guy means business. We're in good hands, and we knew our needle was pointed in the right direction. We were more concerned about, okay, is the coach going to enhance that, or is it going to be a fight back and forth? I think one of the times early on in my junior year, when we played Seton Hall at home, we were down by like 15 at halftime. I think it was like, we were ranked 5th, they were ranked 6th in the country or whatever. It was a good matchup, and we're down by 15 at halftime. This is where I kind of realized like what kind of Coach Self was. Comes in the locker room and he walks in and he puts Frank Williams behind him, and he's talking to the rest of the team. And it wasn't Frank's fault. We all played terrible the first half, but he goes, you know what? He goes, we don't need him. We don't need him. Forget him. We'll win with this group. He goes, Frank, we don't need you. And I was like, oh man. I'm like, never heard Coach Kruger talk to Frank that way. So it was very eye-opening. Frank comes out and scores like the first 10 points of the half.
I remember that.
And he's like, is that good enough, coach? And I'm like, I go, Frank, why does it take that? Like, do that every day.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was eye-opening to me, where I'm like, wow, he really understands how to manage players and individuals. Like he could say that to me and everyone would have agreed. They're like, we don't need him. They're like, yeah, we don't. I'm like, wait a second, guys.
Come on.
When he says it about Frank, we're all like, no, we do. But how is Frank going to react? And Coach Self knew how Frank was going to react. He was going to step up to the plate and play. And that was very refreshing to know that the coach knew how to handle different personalities like that.
Was that Amaker? Tommy Amaker was at Seton Hall, wasn't he, at that time?
Was.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember that game. That was a crazy game. It looked like, just struggling, and then all of a sudden, Frank wakes up, and so now we know why. Now we know what happened there.
Oh yeah, exactly. He was challenged, and all of a sudden he's like, okay. I'm like, Frank, why does it take that? I'm like, if I had your talent, I'm like, come on.
He's got to be, and he's one of the most talented guys, just so skilled. So just did everything. I mean, with the ball, he was fantastic. It was so much fun to watch. I mean, it had to be great to play with a guy like that,
Oh, I mean, talk about a guy who can put a team on his back, but talk about a guy who could frustrate you at the same time, because as he was by far, and I tell people this all the time, he's by far the most talented player I've ever played with or against. And yet there were times I didn't see that. And I'm like, why? I'm like, you, every day you give it to me in practice. I go, and it just seemed like he'd pick his times sometimes. And I'm like, no. You play hard all the time. Like, go out there and put up 30. Like, he plays Kansas in the Sweet 16 game our junior year and puts up 30 points. I'm like, and it was against, Heinrich and those guys. I'm like, those guys are good basketball players. It wasn't like you were playing against a chump.
Yeah.
And
just dominated.
And so he had and he was great. He was a great defender too. That was the crazy thing. Like, it wasn't like, okay, one dimensional. All right, everybody get out of the way. Frank's got the ball. He was that type of player. He actually, with the ball, he reminds me a lot of Curbelo, where you better have your hands up. Like, you better be ready for the ball. Otherwise you're going to get hit in the face. and then he's going to be like, dude, I'm not passing you the ball again. It's like, get your hands up so you're on his good side. So he'll pass it to you the next time because you caught this one,
It's important. I remember Jordan talking about that. The guy made the open shot. It's like, okay, I can throw it to Steve Kerr or John Paxson now. So they got to make that
exactly.
shot. So
exactly.
as you go through, Illinois got the big game Friday with Iowa, right? I mean, that's kind of after last year's, especially the two games, were a little testy. You know, we saw DeMonte and McCaffrey kind of get into it. It was a kind of a channeling their inner Lucas Johnson, right? You know, so as you kind of go through that, was there a team like that? It was Iowa. Was there a rival like when you were playing that was like that, where you just wanted to beat them more than anything else?
Yeah, you know, we really, really, really disliked Indiana. You know, they had some good squads, but we always felt we were better than them. But they always put up a fight. I mean, it was those Dane Fife years, and I remember, I mean, even we played them at home, and Arch stepped on Dane Fife's chest in the middle of the lane one time, and of course, Arch pretended like it was an accident, and it was totally not an accident. And, you know, whoa, what, me? Well, I didn't do anything. You know, them and Iowa were typically the teams we disliked the most, but the team that we wanted to beat the most was by far Michigan State. And I think that comes naturally with, hey, who are the good teams at the time? And a funny story about that, I remember playing it was my junior year. We had a big game against them at home, and you know, another one of those, you know, top 5 matchup ranked teams, whatever. They were a good team, and we ended up beating them. And the Orange Crush rushes the court, and so, you know, of course, I'm like, I'm not going to the locker room. I'm hanging out here with the Crush, and you know, couple of my buddies come up to me from the Crush, and they pick me up. And so I'm out on the court, picked up by my 2 buddies, and the Crush is going crazy. Coach Self, everyone else is back in the locker room. And so finally he sends one of the managers out, and they get me, and I come back in the locker room, and he goes, what were you doing? And I was like, I was celebrating. We just won. He goes, why does the Orange Crush pick up a guy who played 9 minutes and scored 3 points at the end of the game? I was like, he goes, I'll never understand you, Lucas. And I said, I'm not meant to be understood, Coach. So, but it was fun. Like, those are the games that I remember the most. Like, I you know, like you said, my production wasn't in points, and sometimes it wasn't even rebounds. It was more of a presence out there, and a facilitator and whatnot, but and a nuisance. I think Raftery called me a nudge. I don't even know what that is. I think he made up a word.
It's a new word.
I'll take it, but it sounds like something I would be called.
Maybe it's in the dictionary. Nudge, whatever.
Exactly.
Lucas Johnson. So you get your picture there. So that's awesome.
Totally.
All right. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed hearing some of these great stories. You know, hopefully we can watch this Illinois team kind of put together a run like you guys did, get into the Elite Eight, maybe the Final Four, and it'll be fun watching for sure. And definitely we'll get you back on here maybe later on, and we'll talk about how they did this season. Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's not all that often that I can tell stories that people will actually listen to. My wife's like, you've told that a lot. I don't need to hear it again. So to be able to rehash it with someone or some people that actually might enjoy hearing them, it's not a bad feeling. So thanks for having me on. I'll be on anytime you guys want. I love talking to Illini hoops. So
I appreciate it, man. Thanks again. It's Lucas Johnson. Lucas Johnson, the former Illini basketball star. So